Good morning, Intenders.
Good morning.
Welcome and welcome back to Morning Intentions. Today is Wednesday, May 27th, and we're coming into the final 3 days, including today, of living a heart-led life. We haven't done it in a while, so just to keep us on our toes, Annette, would you like to give us our working definition of living a heart-led life one last time for us?
Yes, I was going to say this will be our last time of sharing this working definition and maybe to pique everyone's interest. For June, we're going to have a lighter theme. We've had some heavy themes since October, and we're going to just take a little break from all the heaviness and have a lighter theme for June. So Ada and I are busy preparing for that. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be a wonderful summer treat. That's how I'm thinking about it.
Annette, you told me as we were thinking up the theme, it needs to be light. It needs to be fun. We've been doing so much heaviness, and I've got to say, it's changed my life. Ever since I learned I'm hustling for my worth, I haven't been the same.
And that's the thing about personal development. There are intense times. You look at different concepts and you go deep into those concepts, and it takes a while to soak it in. It takes a while to bring in that self-awareness. It takes a while to start showing up differently. So I think we've all been working very hard with that. And then I also think it's very, very helpful to just take a little break and let things soak in. Not so intense in your learning and your growing. Relax and have some time of joy. So that's what we're going to bring in with our new theme, which we will be sharing with you next Monday.
Which is so nice. A lot of times we start in the middle of the week. It's great to start a new theme on a Monday.
It is. Okay, so for the last time, let's just go straight to reading this for our hearts. We've had an entire month of living a heart-led life, so let's soak this in for our hearts. Living a heart-led life means choosing to show up from a place of steady truth rather than reactive fear. It is a way of living where your thoughts, words, and actions are guided by what is honest, aligned, and meaningful, rather than by pressure, conditioning, or the need for approval. The heart is steady, not reactive. It does not rush, escalate, or demand immediate action. Instead, it creates space to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. The heart is honest, not harsh. It speaks truth with clarity and care, without minimizing, avoiding, or using honesty as a weapon. The heart requires courage, not comfort. It asks you to choose what is right and aligned, even when it is difficult, unfamiliar, or uncomfortable. Living a heart-led life is not about following every feeling. It is about learning to recognize what is true and having the courage to live in alignment with that truth, moment by moment, choice by choice. Now, when we think about that working definition, there's a last piece that Ada and I wanted to talk about today and tomorrow, and then we'll do our reflection on Friday. But today, we want to talk about how important it is to create a life structure that supports your heart. And that takes intentionality.
That must be why we called this Morning Intentions, huh?
It is, because we want everyone to start out their day intentional instead of flying by the seat of our pants.
That's exactly right. Living a heart-led life doesn't happen by accident. A healthy life doesn't happen by accident. Healthy relationships don't happen by accident.
So let's talk about what we mean by life structure. Let's start at the very beginning of the day. In order to wake up ready for your day, you need to go to bed at a reasonable time. You need to have filled the previous evening with healthy activities, whether that's doing some chores, reading a book, watching TV as long as it's not too late and you don't have screen time right before you go to bed, having some meditation or relaxing time right before you fall asleep. You want to structure your next day by being very intentional about the previous evening. So think about that. Did you have a good dinner? Did you take some time for maybe getting some things done around the house or doing your child's homework with them or whatever the case may be? We know you have responsibilities, so it's not completely restful and relaxing, but toward the time when you're going to fall asleep, restful and relaxing, being very intentional. Then when you wake up in the morning, and as Ada said, we called this morning intentions because we want to be clear about our day. What is on the agenda? Are we prepared? Do we need to do some preparation for what we're about to do that day? And think about the energy that you need. You need to have a healthy breakfast. Running out the door with just coffee in hand isn't a recipe for success. And so when we think about heart-led life, you say, well, what does that have to do with the breakfast that I eat? Well, it does, because we can't think as clearly when we're not fueling our bodies properly. And then to make sure that when we're going about our day, we're true and authentic. If we have interactions before we leave home, if we start pushing down our feelings before we even leave home, well, by the time we get to midday, our emotional capacity will be so low. We want to make sure we're nurturing our emotional capacity. We want to make sure we're nurturing our bodies. We want to make sure we have meaningful interactions during our day. So when we think about that heart-led life and structuring our life in a healthy way, if we sit at a desk all day, we want to make sure that on our breaks we get up and walk. Can we get outside and walk outside? That's the perfect thing. Or if outside isn't your thing, get up and walk around the building that you're in. You don't have to go outside, but we need to move our bodies. We need to take some deep breaths. We need to bring that awareness of our health, our mental state into our day so that we can be self-aware, so that we can be authentic. Because remember, we've learned about being self-aligned, but self-aligned, we're not professionals at it yet. We're getting pretty good at it, but it takes the intentionality. And we can't do that when we're sluggish, when we haven't been eating well, when maybe we stayed up too late the night before. We want to make sure that we're structuring our life so that we have the greatest chance for success. Tomorrow's podcast, we're going to talk about who we include in our lives. If we're creating a life structure that supports our heart, yes, conflict is part of life, but we can't have continual conflict all day, every day. Thinking about our environment and being intentional about our environment and making choices that serve us. That is going to be our discussion tomorrow.
I just want to say before we go, I got some pushback over Memorial Day weekend because I was with some friends and they were going to have dessert for dinner. In the past, that would be something I would indulge in. I love me some cake when the time comes. But I knew if I eat dessert for dinner without having a good dinner, the whole next morning at least is going to be all messed up.
That is the perfect example, Ada. You would say, well, what's the harm in having dessert for dinner? Well, maybe not for your friends, but if it is for you, then you don't do it.
Yeah, I told them to go ahead, but I knew for me and how I am, if I eat something like cake, there's no energy in that for me, and I'm going to have a headache, I'm going to be cranky. You don't want to be around me if I'm like that. And I knew it was just going to be a bad time in the end. So I had to be intentional and think that through.
And how did that feel standing up to your friends?
I did get a little pushback. But at the same time, they knew I was honoring myself. And I honestly didn't care that much because I knew I was honoring me. I knew this was going to be the best thing for me for that evening, for the next day at least. And I knew because the thing about me is I know the day snowballs. If you don't eat right for dinner, your morning is kind of off. Then if your morning's off, then your afternoon is off. Then pretty much the whole day is gone. And then how are you going to start the next day? So for me, it was choosing me and being intentional and thinking about and pondering and going within to check in. Is having dessert for dinner, while fun, is that the best choice for me? And the answer was no, it wasn't.
That's a way to live a heart-led life, because with your string of if this isn't right, then this isn't going to probably be right, and this isn't going to be right, well, then you don't have the capacity to be intentional about making the heart-led choices, probably have a greater chance of going into fear.
Yeah, I could have said, well, what will they think about me? I probably should just do it. And I let all that go. I think because we're doing this theme, living a heart-led life, and I said, no, this is what's going to be best for me. I have to have a regular dinner. Y'all get your cake. I don't care. I'll have a tiny little sliver because I know I need to do what's best for me. So with that, our intention for today is I will create a life structure that supports my heart. I will create a life structure that supports my heart. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our day is better because you are part of our day. See you tomorrow.
See you then.